The Jacksonville Jaguars are a very interesting team coming into this season. They missed the playoffs last year, but made it 2 seasons ago. The Jags went 9-8 in both seasons, and of course, did win a playoff game in 2022 after coming back from down 27-0 to beat the Chargers in that insane comeback win. I gotta imagine that the whole vibe and just general feeling around this team would be much worse if it wasn't for that comeback win. It's their lone playoff win since making the AFC Championship all the way back in 2017. Now we enter year 3 with Doug Peterson at head coach, and the Jaguars need to finally just make that jump. But it isn't that simple, especially now that it looks like the Texans and CJ Stroud seem to be the new kings of the AFC South. We're going to break down every single team's roster this offseason and predict their season 2. So here's the first team on the docket, the Jacksonville Jaguars. Looking at the Jaguars offense, and really with offense, you gotta start with the quarterback, Trevor Lawrence. He was a guy that was called generational coming out of college, the surefire first overall pick. That's felt like a stretch at best, but he is a good NFL quarterback. Not anything crazy, but good. He's coming off of 4,000 yards, 21 touchdowns, and 14 interceptions last season. Now, it was a drop-off from 2022, where he had 25 touchdowns and only 8 interceptions. The Jags just need him to make a big step if he ever wants to be an elite-level quarterback. He'll be 25 this season, so the clock is starting to tick, but at the very least, he is still a good quarterback. Mac Jones was in the same 2021 draft and had a good rookie season, but has struggled since. The Patriots gave him up for just a 6th round pick, and now the Jags have a guy at backup that can start if he needs to. Jacksonville's top receivers are some guys that are good, but there's nobody that great. There's nobody that jumps off the page, and that's probably why they just drafted Brian Thomas Jr. 23rd overall. The hope is that he can maybe develop into a really good NFL wide receiver. He was a big scoring threat at LSU. He led the FBS with 17 receiving touchdowns last season to go with 68 catches and 1,177 yards. Of course, though, he was often overshadowed by Malik Neighbors. We'll have to see how long or if Thomas jumps up on the depth chart, but the Jags will have Christian Kirk and Gabe Davis there too. Kirk is entering the 3rd season of that 4-year, $72 million contract that he got that Jackson and many others were pretty surprised about. I was a bit more optimistic about it. I mean, I liked Kirk in Arizona, so I didn't absolutely hate it, and it has worked out so far. He had 1,100 yards and 8 touchdowns on 84 receptions in year 1, and last season, he had 57 catches for 787 yards and 3 touchdowns. Gabe Davis is also coming off of back-to-back similar seasons, and he's never truly struggled, but he's also never been great and has kind of benefited from not being a wide receiver 1. He had 45 receptions, 746 yards, and 7 touchdowns last season. Evan Engram is still the Jaguars tight end, but let's be honest, he is a lot more like a wide receiver. He got that 3-year, $41.25 million contract to re-sign last offseason, and he followed it up with the best year of his career with 114 receptions, 963 yards, and 4 touchdowns. We'll also see plenty of catches from Travis Etienne out of the backfield too. Last season, he caught 58 passes for 476 yards and a touchdown. But that wasn't it. On the ground, he had a 1,000-yard season with 11 touchdowns on 267 attempts. Now, the offensive line could really end up being a strength or a weakness. We'll just have to wait and see. Left tackle is always the most important position on the line, and probably one of the most important positions on the team in general. At least as long as your quarterback is a righty and not Tua Tagovailoa. Cam Robinson has been with the Jaguars since I was a sophomore in high school. Last year, though, he was suspended for 4 games for violating the league PED policy and then missed some time with a knee injury. In 2022, he had a season-ending meniscus injury. The Jags really need him to stay on the field, and that hasn't exactly been the case as of late. Last season, rookie first-rounder Anton Harrison played every game at right tackle, and while he was banged up a bit last year, he played well, especially in pass protection. At guard, there's Brandon Sheriff, and he played every game. He was originally drafted by Washington, so I love the guy, and he's just a stud. Jacksonville also traded a 6th rounder for Ezra Cleveland from the Vikings and slid him in at left guard. The biggest improvement for the Jaguars line this season, though, should be at center. Luke Fortner struggled last year, so the Jags went out and signed Mitch Morse. He's just been great and is coming off of blocking for Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes before that. The Jaguars have a pretty middle-of-the-pack offense, offense. It's nothing bad, but it's certainly nothing too great. Their defense, however, is much closer to being a top 10 unit than the offense. The defense made some pretty big signings this offseason. The biggest one is probably Eric Armstead. He's been with the 49ers for the past 9 years and has racked up 33.5 sacks in all, 5 coming last season. He'll play opposite of Roy Robertson Harris, who's been a 3-sack per season guy for the Jags since signing back in 2021. Jacksonville did also just use a second-round pick on Mason Smith. He's coming off of a 4.5-sack season at LSU, and he's only 21 years old. 2 rounds later, they also drafted defensive tackle Jordan Jefferson. He had 36 tackles, 7 of which were for a loss in 2023, his lone year at LSU after transferring from West Virginia. He's slated to be behind Devon Hamilton on the depth chart, who's going into his 5th season in the pros, all coming with the Jags. When you talk about Jacksonville's defense, the big name is obviously Josh Allen. He's just a freak. He's coming off of 17.5 sacks last season, tied for the second most in the league, and has 45 sacks in his 5-year career so far. He's coming off the best year of his career, and it's been clear that the Jags made the right call, taking him 7th overall back at the 2019 NFL Draft. Now, he just cashed in on a big 5-year, $150 million extension. Opposite of him on the strong side is going to be former 1st overall pick Travon Walker. He had 3.5 sacks as a rookie, but then jumped to 10 sacks in year 2. A lot of people, including myself, thought that Aiden Hutchinson probably should have been the guy at 1, and he's been really good and even just made the Pro Bowl, but Walker is starting to show those tools that the Jags fell in love with. On the inside, there's Foye Oluokun, who just led the league with 111 solo tackles last season. The year before, though, he had 128. He's just been great on the inside since coming to Jacksonville from Atlanta. Then there's going to be Devin Lloyd there with him, a 2022 first rounder. In 2 years, he has 242 total tackles. Finally, the secondary. You have to start talking about Tyson Campbell. He had a disappointing season last year and missed some time with a soft tissue injury. He needs to bounce back first and foremost. He showed some serious talent in his first 2 seasons in the league, and the Jags could certainly use that. Luckily, the Jags do have some depth now at the corner position with 2 new signings. Ronald Darby is coming off of a good year with the Ravens. He's a guy that's on his 6th different team entering year 10 in the pros, but he's definitely had his good moments, and his veteran presence will likely be a good thing. The Jags also signed Darnell Savage, a 2019 Packers first-round pick, who signed a 3-year deal after the end of his 5th-year option. Then at safety, Jacksonville has a pair of guys on rookie deals getting a lot of reps. Antonio Johnson was a 5th-round rookie last year, and then Andre Sisco is going to be on the last season of his rookie deal. They did also go out and sign Terrell Edmonds, go Hokies, who played for the Eagles before getting traded to the Titans last year, following 5 seasons with the Steelers, who drafted him in the 1st round. The Jaguars have a good, but not necessarily great roster. It makes them much more of a middle-of-the-pack team. So how much success do we think this team will have in 2024? I think it goes without saying that this just isn't a Super Bowl team. I mean, anything could happen, but I just don't see it. Trevor Lawrence really needs to bounce back and show a little bit more for me to be really sold on him. Looking over their schedule, I'm relatively optimistic about them and have them finishing 10-7. It's another good record and another good year, but still not too great. I do still think the Texans are the best team in the division after their success last season and will probably win the South while the Jags just miss out there, but I do see them finishing 2nd in the division and at least having a shot at a wild card spot. It was actually really close for me between them and the Colts. It's safe to say that Jackson is a little less sold on the Jaguars than me for sure. He has them going 8-9, losing 1 more game than they have under Peterson. He isn't fully sold on the team or Trevor Lawrence as an elite quarterback and has them finishing 3rd in the division and well out of the playoffs. Those are our predictions. Let us know what you guys think they'll do this season down in the comment section below. It should be a fun season for the Jaguars, but they, and especially Trevor Lawrence, just need to make a jump.